Hi, ladies and gentlemen. For those who don't know me, I'm Steve Harney. I'm the founder of Keeping Current Matters, and I'm going to be your host this morning on this week's Deep Dive. Well, let's jump right into it so we know exactly what we're doing. This morning, what we're going to be talking about is the foreclosure situation, ladies and gentlemen. And it's crucially important that we understand, as real estate professionals, how this is impacting our customers. There's all sorts of crazy headlines out there talking about the fact that, well, we might see 2008 all over again. They're worried about a recession and unemployment, what that's going to do to unemployment. They're worried about, are people paying their mortgage right now? Are we going to have a negative equity situation? All of those concerns are being disseminated by every single news source there is out there. So you're going to see crazy headlines. You're going to see people making YouTube videos out of their mother's basement saying that the world is about to crash. And what our job is to make sure that all that craziness doesn't cause any panic, any fear in our consumers. So let's get started right now with the foreclosure crisis. What is really about to happen? Because I want you to be really tremendously on top of this. As we always say here at the Deep Dive, most agents know what's happening. Good agents understand what's happening. Great agents can explain what's happening. And that's the whole purpose behind the Deep Dive. We don't want you to just know it. We don't even just want you to understand it. We want to give you all the tools you need to explain it to your clients, because you overcoming the fear of whatever there is out there isn't as important as your consumer overcoming that. Now, I will tell you, I do a lot of readings from Sahil Bloom. He talks about work-life balance. He has a lot of the top CEOs in the country as his clients. And he came out this past week saying this: world-changing CEOs aren't the smartest people in their organization. They are exceptional at two things: aggregating data, communicated it simply and effectively. It almost sounds like he works at KCM. That's exactly what we do. What we try to do is aggregate all the data for you, and then what we try to do is help you communicate it, and we've used for 17 years the term simply and effectively. Data in, story out. If you can build that storytelling skill, you'll always be valuable. So what I want to do today is help you build with the data we've aggregated to build a story that you can communicate simply and effectively on the whole foreclosure crisis, and one by one destroy some of the myths or debunk some of the myths that are out there right now. Let's start with the unemployment situation. Most people know that we're at historically low levels of unemployment, but people also were concerned about a recession coming. Now, is there a recession coming? Well, it seems that there's less and less chance of that we might have a soft landing, and the economists that are surveyed still give it like a 50-50 shot. But what people are concerned about, well, if a recession comes, we might see 5% unemployment. It might kick right back up again. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's understand that if the unemployment rate goes up to 5 or 6%, it doesn't mean we're going to have a flood of foreclosures. We have to understand what this means. We're at historic lows now. So I want you to take this graph and I want you to put it in your presentations. I want you to put it on your iPhone. So if anyone asks you or has that question, bring this graph out. This will debunk the whole concern here. We're at 3.5% today. The 75-year average, going back as long as the BLS took statistics, that's the Bureau of Labor Statistics, as long as they took statistics, the average unemployment rate should be 5.7. So if we go up to 5 or 6, we're going to the average. What people are afraid of, we're going to go back to 2008 to 2012, the great financial crisis. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was the average over those years from 2008 to 2012 was 8.3%. No one is projecting that. No one is projecting that's where we're going. So we have to understand that, yes, unemployment might tick up, and we might even get back to the 75-year average. But that doesn't mean there's a flood of foreclosures coming because people can't afford to pay their mortgage. Next, the mortgage debt. And I saw a whole bunch of headlines on this last week, because the reports came out saying that in this country right now, there's $12 trillion of mortgage debt. Cumulatively, that's the amount of mortgage debt Americans hold. And a lot of people say, oh, it's the highest it's ever been in all time. There are people who owe more on their mortgage than they've ever owed before. Well, they owe cumulatively more money. There's no question about that. But really, the thing that would affect foreclosures is, can they afford to make the payment on that $12 trillion worth of debt? So this is another graph I want you to become very familiar with. This is the mortgage income ratio. Meaning, all right, you have X amount of mortgage debt. What is that in ratio to your disposable income, the amount of money that you can spend? And what we can see going all the way back to January 1980, that number was 4.4%. April 92, 6.9%. At the height of the financial crisis, it was 7.2% of disposable income was paid toward mortgaging. Then it fell like a rock since then. First of all, less people owned houses. Right after the great financial crisis, home ownership rate dropped some because it artificially went up during the run-up, and it came down. So it was a little bit less mortgage debt there. And then what happened? Interest rates kept on sinking for 10 years, over a decade. So people were refinancing it, so they still had a mortgage amount that they owed, but the amount they owed on a monthly basis was getting less and less and less and less and less. So right now, we're not at the bottom of that number. January 2021, it was 3.5%, but still at 3.9% where we are today. Again, that's the percentage that of the money you make that you're paying toward the mortgage. That's lower than it was in 1980. And any time since then, outside of that 2021-22 era. So yeah, there's a lot of money that's owed on mortgages, but most of it is at a 3% or 4% mortgage rate. So it's not the amount of money somebody owes that's going to put them into foreclosure. It's them not being able to make the payment. And the percentage of their mortgage that the relationship of that mortgage amount to the amount of money they make is in a great position. So don't look at the cumulative number. That number is always going to go up. Why? Because more and more people buy houses and prices keep on going up. Over the next 30 years, home prices are going to go up. So the amount of mortgage debt is going to increase. What we want to take a look at always is this. What's the ratio to the income? Another thing that I'm hearing out there, and agents are coming back to me, everyone's afraid that millions of houses went into forbearance program. The forbearance program is now ending. Parts of it have already ended, and it's twittering out. What happened to all those people? Are they all going to come on the market as foreclosures? Well, no, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, let's take a look at how many people, as a percentage of all mortgages, entered the forbearance program, and how many are still in it. It's not that the amount that entered at the beginning, which was over 8% of all mortgages, are still in it. They worked things out. They caught up on their payments. During the pandemic, we gave families a lot of freedom and individuals a lot of freedom to catch up. And what was happening while they were trying to catch up? The government was sending them money. What happened? They could get a job and even a better job. So what wound up taking place is a lot of those families and those individuals didn't have to lose their house to foreclosure. They worked through the forbearance program. The forbearance program worked. And now it's down and down and down, that right now there's less than 0.5% of all mortgages are in the forbearance program. So I want you to understand that. That was a good thing. It worked in a very big way. Vice President of Industry Analysis at the Mortgage Bankers Association, Marina Walsh. Mortgage forbearance has declined because most homeowners have maintained or improved their financial health. Like I was saying, all of a sudden they were given a whole bunch of money so they could catch up on the back payments, and they got better jobs because the job market was so crazy. Forbearance remains a viable loss mitigation option for homeowners who may struggle under more challenging economic conditions. What the forbearance program taught the banks is if they're patient with people, many times it's going to work out. Back in 2008, if you were 3 months late on your mortgage, they were ready to foreclose. They were ready to take that house back. Now they're trying harder and harder to work with the people. I'm not saying there's not going to be any foreclosures. We're going to get to that in a second. All right? There will be some foreclosures, but there'll be a lot less because banks now understand better than they did in 2008 that with a helping hand, many people can catch up. This is actually what happened. This is kind of a crazy graph, but I wanted to be very transparent with you. I'm not sure if I would share it because it's a little difficult to understand, but these are all the people that exited the forbearance program. What happened? 35.3%, all the green, they paid off. They came clean. All right? They were paid in full. They were right there, no problem whatsoever at all. They were back to making the normal mortgage payments on time, or they paid the house off. 45.6% were workouts or repayment plans. Again, the forbearance program worked. Hey, listen, let's rework your mortgage in a way that you can afford it. Give you a break, put some money extra on, later on, extend the mortgage, whatever the forbearance workout program was. And 45.6% successfully did a workout program. I'm going to drop to the bottom. 1.2 lost their home. People that came into the forbearance program did go to foreclosure, or did a short sale, or gave the bank the house back and the deeds in lieu. And now there's 18% was still in trouble when they left. They hadn't caught up on their payments and they didn't make a workout plan. But understand, those people don't turn it into foreclosures. They just don't do a workout plan. Maybe they came into money. Maybe they sold the house. Maybe they refinanced the house at a lower mortgage rate that they could afford. So just because they left a forbearance program and were still in trouble when they left, doesn't mean it turned into foreclosures. Our percentage will, as the percentage always will. But that's not what happened this time. And that's important that we understand that. Now, let's go to the foreclosures themselves. And I want you, because this is going to generate the biggest headlines, before we go there. When I was growing up, the Daily News, I grew up in New York City. And Daily News is one of the major papers in New York City. And they had a writer there named Jimmy Breslin, who became famous as a reporter. And he had a great quote. He said, the whole job of a newspaper is to get you to read more newspapers. The whole job of television is to get you to watch more television. And what do they know, especially in our culture right now? Negative sells. So what wound up taking place when Adam put out their last foreclosure report, the headline said, well, foreclosures are up 187% over 2021. They didn't compare it to last year. They compared it to 2021 because that number was big. Foreclosures up 187%. Ladies and gentlemen, let's put a little context to that. First of all, they were comparing it to 2021. If we look all the way to the right, that was in the middle of the moratorium. The middle of the forbearance program. They weren't foreclosing on houses. So, of course, the amount of foreclosures right now, percentage-wise, is going to be much greater. Because if you have 100 houses and 10 go up, all right, that's a 10% increase. If you had one house and one went to foreclosure, that's a 100% increase. The smaller the beginning number, the larger the percentage increase. And they didn't even compare it to last year because it was not news. It wasn't a big headline. They compared it to the lowest year since they've been taking records at them. What I want you to do, this is the first 6 months of the year. These are foreclosure filings, default notices, scheduled auctions, or where they took the house back. And we can see there's nothing like it was in 2008, 9, 10 during the great financial crisis, during the housing bust. We're nowhere in the realm of those numbers. What we're going to return to are numbers like 2016, 17, and 18. We're going to see 500,000 foreclosures in this country because in a normal year, we see that. Now, it's devastating to the families that are going through it, especially if there are children involved. It's devastating to those families. And my heart goes out to them. But understand that things happen every year. There's deaths, there are people lose their jobs, there are health situations, people get involved in drugs. For whatever reason, they stop making the mortgage payments. And every year in the 35 years I've been in the business, there's a certain percentage that happens. And we're going to hit that normal percentage, but we're not going to go up to the millions of foreclosures that happen during each year during the great financial crisis. When that's not going to take place. But the headlines are kind of leading people to believe that. We have to debunk this myth. So another slide you should definitely have on your phones. So when people say, well, that's not really true, foreclosures are not going up. As a matter of fact, the slight decline in foreclosures, this is from the CEO of Adam, filings we are seeing, a decline in foreclosures, is yet another sign of a rebounding housing market. With home prices back up, several factors have combined to put financial resources in the hands of homeowners, providing more options to avoid foreclosure. So the most recent data is less than the data right before that. Graded in the data from last year and graded in the data from 2021. But from the previous quarter, things went down slightly. So there's not this run-up that people are thinking about. And I love this quote. Bill McBride from Calculated Risk, he called the housing crash back in 2006, 7, and 8. As a matter of fact, in 2008, this is what he said, November. Foreclosure activity is already at record levels. Yet as prices fall, foreclosure activity will probably continue to increase. The activity will be literally off the chart. Meaning the foreclosures back in 2008, he foresaw that there are going to be more foreclosures, then they'd have to change the left-hand side of the chart because they have to increase the number. That's how many were coming in. He called it back then. Same man a couple of weeks ago. There will not be a foreclosure crisis this time. So the person who called it last time is saying, looking at the same data I looked at last time, not happening this time. And I think that's important. Now, as soon as you say that to someone, because we have a lot of experience, a lot of agents are using this dialogue, and what's taking place is we're hearing what they're getting back in return. And what they're getting back in return is, well, it might not happen yet, but I'm telling you, there's less and less people selling the house. There's more and more people delinquent on their loans. I could just tell. The economy is not that good. Inflation is up. There's got to be people not paying their mortgage. Well, let's take a look at that, because at KCM, what we want to do is we want to aggregate the data, and then we want to communicate it simply and effectively. That's what we do. So I don't know if we can make any simpler than this. Here's the serious delinquencies or on a decline. These are the rates at Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Not only is it not true that more and more people are not paying their mortgage, it is true that more and more people are paying their mortgage. The delinquency rate is going down, not up. So what does that mean to the future? Well, if people are not falling 90 days behind on their mortgage, they're not going to be foreclosed on. And the rate of people that are 90 days behind is falling like a rock. As a matter of fact, I have a couple of quotes on that. Serious delinquencies, those 90 plus days past due, dropped to the lowest they've been since August 2006. Overall, the national delinquency rate remains 1.15% below its 2000 to 2005 pre-Great Financial Crisis seasonal average. That's this month's report from the Black Knight Mortgage Monitor. Seriously delinquent, that means 90 days behind, dropped to the lowest they've been since August of 2006, before things got crazy. And they're below before things got crazy from 2000 to 2005. Normal years. Ladies and gentlemen, the delinquency rate is not a challenge. Foreclosures are not a challenge. Just not happening. Another quote. This is again from Marina Walsh, the Vice President of Industry Analysis at MBA. The seasonally adjusted mortgage delinquency rate fell to its lowest level since the Mortgage Bankers Association survey began in 1979. Buoyed by a resilient job market, homeowners are continuing to make their mortgage payments. Since they've taken records of delinquency rates, this is the lowest it's ever been. So there are a lot of people out there doing crazy headlines, doing YouTube videos. Oh, the market's going to crash. Delinquency rate is up. No, it's not. They're handpicking certain data to make it look something that it's not. They're not putting any context to it. For example, the foreclosure. Are foreclosures up from 2021 when they couldn't do a foreclosure? Yeah, it's up from then. It's up a lot from then. because that was almost zero. But when you look at it, with some perspective going all the way back, over a decade, no, we're real low on this issue. And ladies and gentlemen, and again, it's heartbreaking to all those families going through it. I don't want to dismiss that in any way. But right now, in the real estate, in the housing market, we can use that inventory. It's not like that's going to flood to the market like it did in 2008 and cause prices to come crashing down. What little foreclosures are going to come to the market are going to be gobbled up immediately. We don't have enough inventory. Back in 2008, 2009, we had too much inventory, plus foreclosures were coming to the market. We have the exact opposite situation now. And, it's funny to me how a short challenge people will latch on to spread bad news. So what happened second half of last year? Prices started to depreciate. They were way high in appreciation at the beginning of the year. We did that 2 weeks ago. And then there was a correction the second half of last year. So prices went down for 6 months. They depreciated minimally for 6 months. People would say we're going to go down 20%. They didn't. They went down in total about 3%. In some markets, maybe as much as 10%. Very few markets as much as 10%. But they're on the way back, and most parts of the country are all the way back. We're higher than we were June of last year. But people like to latch on. So, with the prices falling, we might run into negative equity. That's another thing that's really being promoted out there. The big challenge in 2008 was how much negative equity. As soon as people's house isn't worth as much as the mortgage, they walk away. First of all, not everyone walked away. It was called a strategic default. We did all the research on that back in 2008 through 2012. Not everyone walked away, but a lot of people did. All right? And the negative equity caused those strategic defaults, which caused a whole bunch of foreclosures. So if we went into a negative equity situation, I'd say, yeah, I would agree with you. But we're not in a negative equity situation. We're nothing like the way it was back then. Let me prove that to you. First of all, this is the amount of equity people are sitting on. How great it is. 38.7% of the houses in this country are owned free and clear. The bank doesn't even have a mortgage on it. Those houses can't go to foreclosure because there's no mortgage that they're paying. Another 30% have more than 50% equity in their home. Meaning if they have a $400,000 home, about the average sales the price of a home, they have $200,000 equity, that 30%. Those are big numbers, ladies and gentlemen. Nobody that owns the house free and clear, they can't get foreclosed on. And if somebody turned around and fell behind in their payments and they had $200,000 equity in their house, they'd sell it. They wouldn't let it go to foreclosure. So this whole concept that negative equity is here, not true. 29.2% have anywhere from 1 to 49% equity. So if prices did fall again, the ones that are 1, 2, up to 5%, they might fall into negative equity. But again, that's a minimal amount. Right now, that number is 2.1% of all the mortgages in the country. That's not including the 38.7%. 2.1% of all the mortgages in the country are in negative equity. That's nothing compared to what we had before. And here's a quote from the news media team at CoreLogic. The number of U.S. homeowners in negative equity dropped to the lowest level in over 12 years. So while people are telling you, well, I'm afraid with the prices falling last year, there's more people in negative equity. No, there's not. We have the lowest negative equity numbers in the last more than a decade. Let's make sure that we understand that and that we can combat that. And here's the slide. There's a couple of slides I said, put this slide on your phone. Because just in case you're someplace, where, you're coming out of your house of worship and people are talking, you're at a barbecue, people are talking, you're going back to school and you're meeting all the other parents of the other children and they're talking about the housing market, have a couple of these slides right on your phone. Take a picture, download it on your phone so that when they ask you a question, you can show them, no, we're okay. And this next one's a really good one about negative equity. Ladies and gentlemen, here's the difference between the height of the great financial crisis in regard to negative equity and where we stand today. These are the numbers from the latest Black Knight report. Back in the height of the great financial crisis, over 16 million houses were in negative equity. Right now, it's not a million, it's not a 500,000, it's 344,000. Now, I'm not saying that I don't hope that those 344 come out of negative equity and have positive equity. Of course I do. But if we're talking about this is going to somehow dramatically impact the housing market right now, no. This is not 2008. I don't care how many beautiful cameras you have in your mother's basement and all the new lighting you have because people are listening to your, gloom and doom YouTube video. You're wrong. The numbers don't add up. I know negative news sells. I know really negative news sells really well. And I know that data can be manipulated. You can make it look like the world is coming apart. But it's not. And the only people that can make sure that the consumer isn't swayed by some of these crazies is by getting the truth out. Debunking the myths that are being generated right now. That's important to who we are. Okay, I hope I gave you enough on the foreclosure situation. You're very comfortable if someone says, well, I think we're going to go into another foreclosure crisis. You can talk your way through that very, very easily. And please, download a couple, because these slides are so powerful, some of these slides, download them onto your phone. Next week, we're going to have an interesting deep dive. It's going to be live from Dallas, Texas. I'm going to be down in Dallas at the Tom Ferry event, and we're going to look at alternative mortgage products. ARMs, that they had a really negative connotation back in 2008. Have they changed? Are people using ARMs? Are people willing to use adjustable rate mortgages again? Is there a fear that the same thing was going to happen back then? Are these adjustable rate mortgages a little bit different than our mother's adjustable rate mortgage? We'll talk about buy downs. We'll talk about assumable mortgages, because there's some out there at very low rates. And we'll also talk about why are there so many cash sales? Where's that money coming from? So alternative mortgage products, alternative financing products, that's what we're going to be talking about next week. And I'm very proud to announce that we're going to have a special guest there, one of the greatest, most prominent mortgage specialists in the country. Top-notch guy that has multi-million-dollar clients. And he's going to talk to us about what's really taking place in mortgage in regard to alternative financing and what products are out there. That's going to be one you don't want to miss. With interest rates staying stickily high and we're not sure when they're coming down, maybe it's a time for us to get a little bit more involved in some other alternative financing for people. Not crazy stuff, not stuff that's going to cause bad results later on. But good, solid products that, if used right for the right client, can save them a lot of money and get them the house they want. Now, again, I just want to go back to this, ladies and gentlemen. What's the deep dive all about? I don't just want you to know what's happening. I don't want you to understand what's happening. KCM does a deep dive every single morning, so you can explain what's happening. That's why you call it a deep dive. You know more and have better evidence about there's not going to be a foreclosure crisis that's coming down the road than maybe anyone in the country right now, because you spent the last 28 minutes with me. That's cool. But remember, aggregating the data is one step. Communicating it to you simply and effectively is another step. Data in, story out. If you can build a story, that storytelling skill, you'll always be valuable. And that's what I want from you. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to tell you, I don't mind being here. I don't mind doing this. I know I'm not the best looking guy, and I know that at the beginning I'm there and I'm talking to you. As I always say, I don't look like George Clooney. I don't look like Brad Pitt or whoever the new heartthrob is. But I know that these are important. And I know I need to be in front of you, helping you understand all the craziness that's happening in the market right now. But you own that same moral obligation to your clients and your customers. So I don't care if you don't look like whoever's the starlet, the most popular starlet right now, you need to do videos. Why do you need to do videos? Because people are looking at videos. That's how they're getting so much of their information. I don't care what you look like. Brush your hair, get up, and go. And what we do every Monday on a deep dive, we're going to follow up. I worked out with the people in Real Talk at KCM. We're going to give you the best video to put out covering what we just covered in the deep dive. Why you shouldn't expect a flood of foreclosures. It's a short 1 minute. It doesn't do everything I did in the 28 minutes we had together. It doesn't do that. But it gives you a quick 1 minute, bam, this is why there's not going to be foreclosures. Get that video out. And when someone watches that video, if they want more information, who are they going to contact? You. And who has more information? You. Who can explain the information you have? You. I can't get in front of every homeowner. I can't get in front of every buyer. But as a team, we can, or at least most of them. Let's make sure we get out there and fulfill our moral obligation. Because, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to sort this up right now. It's crucially important. Where we are right now, people are starting to get a little nervous. Fear is starting to creep in. We have to eliminate the fear. The market's going to be fine. Mortgage rates are eventually going to come down. Sales are going to eventually go up. What we need now is patience. But during those times that we need the patience, if we're not helping our buyers and sellers be a little patient through this process, they're starting to get concerned. That concern can turn into fear. That fear turns into paralysis. You know what? I ain't going to do anything right now. The market's crazy. That doesn't help them. They should be making educated decisions on what's really taking place, not some craziness. But the only person that stands between them and that craziness is you. Please, let's make these videos and let's share them. Crucially important. I don't even just think it's something you need to do from an ethical standpoint. I think you have a moral obligation to do it. People are getting hurt by the craziness out there. Let's set the story straight. All right? See you next Monday, 11 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock on the West Coast. I'll be in the middle of the country in Dallas with a special guest, giving you everything you need to know about alternative financing and alternative mortgage products. See you then.